You are listening to the Hammersley Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Yes, I'm good. I'm really good.
Welcome.
Happy
Welcome to another podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'd be happy to know, just as we were doing the interview, we got another £179 order of bedding. So that was nice to see. Actually got an order yesterday, £1,600, which was nice.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's pretty much the average order value now. It's gone up a lot.
Yeah.
You know, the simplest way to put the average order value up. Do you know that? Sorry, you overtalked then. The simplest way to put the average order value, which everybody seems to forget, put the prices up.
It sounds like an accountant. He kind of goes, well, you just need to put your prices up. It's like, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah.
But it's true. Anyway.
Well, sometimes
hey, you've got a new microphone, Mark. Now we have the same microphone. In fact, I've got the upgraded model to you. Which,
have you?
You know,
you've got the one with the gubbins inside it, though, haven't you? I've got
the preamp. Box. Well, hopefully it means now that people won't have to adjust the volume continually. You know, because I was listening to our podcast because it came on. You know, it wasn't like a kind of let's listen to my own podcast thing. It just fast comes on in the car
when you're talking. Yeah.
Sorry, you continually over talk, and you know, I have no idea what you just said. What did you just say? It was some insult.
I can't remember. No, I was just saying you just fast forward to the bits where you're speaking, just to listen to your own voice, and you go, "Yeah, that's a good point."
And I nod along.
That is
amazing.
And I say,
"Yeah, do you know what? That's a great
really
point."
Insightful.
And then Mark talks. You know, you skip 15 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, press it.
There you go. This is rubbish.
Times 2.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a better mic than you now, which means I'm better than you.
Exactly.
And that's
been more insightful.
That's all that people need to know. Well, listen. Hopefully, that's good.
What's the
right.
topic?
Well, the topic is, and it was actually, I was actually listening to one of your workshops that you did on the Zero to Hero Meta program.
It's taking you a while.
And
I
was listening to.
You've been doing that for a while.
Well, I put it on the com. There's a lot of videos. I mean, I know we've updated the whole series, so you know, I do think it's important that I watch some of the latest workshops. Then you know we are aligned. But you know, I'm going through it all. I mean, I said it on. You know, it's anyway. I got to the bit that you're talking about the different types of meta ads to run based on what kind of business you are. And, you know, when you were describing certain ads as certain, you know, more applicable for certain, you know, e-commerce brands than others. And as you're saying it, it's very obvious why. And there's lots of differences. And when you obviously we've been doing it for many, many years, it becomes really obvious. And it made me realize that there was something very fundamental about our philosophy and our coaching and how we approach e-commerce businesses, in that there's a big misconception in e-commerce. And it's not just a misconception in 2025, but it's a misconception that I think has been consistent in my entire career of e-com, right from, you know, when it first started to now. And it is that one size fits all, that something you see on one e-commerce site will, and it's working for them, will, of course, it'll work for me because we're an e-commerce business, right? So if it's working for one e-com business, it's going to work for another one. And of course, the answer is not always, and sometimes it can actually make things worse. And, you know, we probably talk about it, and it's maybe something we've become, you know, better known for, is as that dispelling the myth, you know, between, you know, the misconception of what it is. And so anyway, I thought that was a really interesting topic of discussion about why one size doesn't fit all, and how do you know? You know, how do you know? You know, and when
you're kind of copying someone. You mean if you see someone doing well and you go, well, will that work for me, or is it something that won't work for me?
And if I just illustrate the point, and this was something that I used to talk about when I used to go and do, well, I still do, speaking at shows and things, I would always say, look, walk down the high street, go to any shopping mall around the world, and just walk through it and see how each retail store is laid out, and what the experience is like, and how different it is, and such a huge variety of the way stores are laid out based on what they're selling in the store. It's incredibly different, and there is no store. I mean, you'll find at one store, our brand of stores is consistent. If you go to London or New York, and it is a Lululemon store, it has the same feel, and that is not what we're talking about. We're saying that the Lululemon store is laid out very differently to the Lush store, the cosmetics, or the soap brand. I think it's Lush. Probably right.
Yeah.
But
Lush.
It is a different experience, and they're all laid out differently. And then you go into the the Dr. Martens shop, and that's laid out differently. And then you go into the WH Smiths, and that's laid out differently. Like, why? So and it's the same thing about e-commerce, is that you see so much variety in the high street, because we are dealing with different shopping experiences, and there's different needs and wants to get the most out of the store. And it is, we lay the store out in a retail environment to get the best conversion rate, the best value per consumer in it. It's exactly the same online. No difference whatsoever. So but there's some weird, I think, do you know where it comes from? I'll shut up in a minute and let you speak, but I think the history of our industry of e-commerce was dominated by developers. It was they were leading the race. Go back 20, 30 years ago, it was dominated by geeks of, devs, developers.
It was also limited by the technology, wasn't it?
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah, it was limited by the technology available. So, the developers and the e-commerce guys were actually leading the race, and it was like, who could have the best website would win. Who would have the best, e-com experience, and who would have the best widget of frequently bought together or upselling. It was like they were the ones that were winning. And now that's a level playing field. And it is not about the technology. It is about the consumer and the needs and wants, and understanding how to get your message across and cut through the noise. So I think that's where this kind of one-size-fits-all danger came from. Was this this it was led by devs. Anyway, that's my intro. Do you want to pick it up from here?
That's fine. I think I'll just ask you some questions and we'll go from there. So let's say bedding. I'm running a bedding site, Bedding Envy. And I want it to look good, and I want to design it in the right way. What would be a mistake that I might make with the design of that store, and what would be something that I should do? So, because obviously I'm trying to bring it back to someone sitting there listening to the podcast. They're going, well, how does this apply to my store? What can I do? So what might be a mistake I might make with bedding?
Well, I mean, the first thing is probably the overwhelming feeling is to look at some of the leading brands in that space, to look at some really big players. So it may be, you might say, I'm going to look at the White Company because they're doing 100 million. They're very successful brand selling bedding, 100 million, and I'm going to copy their store. I'm going to copy it. But what you forget, of course, is that the White Company is a White Company and has a huge brand, and everybody knows it and everybody recognizes it. So what they can put on the site isn't going to be, enough for me. So I think that is a mistake, and we talked about that, and how we would laugh and joke that would be a bit like us trying to compete with Prada and our own perfume manufacturer. Yeah. So I think that's a mistake, and I think but I'll give you an example that's probably even more basic and extreme than that. I remember working with a company that was selling a very problem-solving, rational purchase, and it was casters, on the bottom of trolleys. And, they're really lovely client, really amazing, lovely brand. But they were selling a very, very much an industrial, urgent need. They were selling these caster wheels on the bottom of these trolleys that was used for like shop fitters and like, warehouses and, manufacturing places. And so when they came to build a site, they were like, right, we really like the look of the Rolex website. We love this, the amazing, how beautiful it looks, and how it's got like great, video, and it's really subtle, and it's very clean, and it's beautiful, it's really aspirational. And it's like, hang on a minute, you're selling, caster wheels. It's absolutely not what the customer wants. They're in a distressed need. They need to get these caster wheels replaced urgently. So it's about a huge range of stock, that's available for next day delivery with a massive 5-year guarantee, that it's definitely going to fit. That is what it's about. And that's obviously very, very different. But, there are, the extreme example is that you will think, you have to understand what you're selling. We talked a little about this last week, with the heaven and hell. Is it heaven play? Is it a hell play? Is it a problem-solving rational purchase, or is it desirability, play? And I think that's the first thing.
And Rolex is heaven. Like, you're not going to sell casters on. Well, heaven is like, oh, your life is going to be transformed by your trolley wheels. And it's like, it's just not an aspirational purchase, is it?
No.
Whereas
exactly
a Rolex
right.
is pretty much
as
aspirational as you can get.
Yeah, but I think, so take bedding. Bedding has an element of both. It has a heaven and it has a hell. And actually, we would lead with the heaven, which is this, unbelievable night's sleep, which is what you want. And the hell is, how does it wash? And is it easy to, does it get crinkled, and, does it last for a long time? And those, the reassurances there. But so I think, what would be a mistake for bedding? Well, if we take the ads, it is obvious what bedding is. It would be obvious what it is. So we don't need to explain what bedding is for. So we don't need to be too clever with the ads. We're not trying to say there is this is a revolutionary new thing. We know what people are, and we are trying to be disruptive, because the likelihood is they've already got bedding. Everybody has bedding already, and we're replacing something that is old or outdated, and we want something new. So it's obvious what the need is. So we don't need to be too clever with our ads. I mean, literally, it's probably an image ad. It is a testimonial image ad with a picture of a stack of bedding and a testimonial saying this is the world's best bedding that I've ever experienced. And that's about it. It's very, very simple. And if we did anything too clever with video, or trying to have this most amazing, we would be missed, wouldn't it? That we wouldn't be able to see, what it was. And I think
if you went into the industry and you looked at like the top bedding people, I think Ralph Lauren does purple bedding or something like that. If you went and looked at that and you said, well, that's how they're selling bedding, they're selling millions of dollars worth of bedding, you've got to be very careful that your customers are not going to come to your store with the same mental model that they have about Ralph Lauren. So Ralph Lauren people have got everybody knows who they are. There's a certain level of quality aspiration that's already set there. So you walk in, you either buy it or you don't based on that. So the mistake is thinking that you've got the same level of mental model and the people coming to your site, which they don't. So you have to work out ways to elevate your brand into that way. And as an example, I was talking to someone this morning. She sells art online, and she's trying to sell art prints, and she's an artist, and she does these beautiful photography of flowers, and it takes her like 80 hours to do the flowers, and she has to age the flowers and set it up and all that kind of stuff. But she's just putting them online. And I says, well, you've got to elevate that. You've got to bring that belief to the picture. So like, for example, with Ben, when Ben sells his maps online, his best ad is, I think it's saying something like, a client of mine commissioned me to draw a map of Australia, a fantasy map of Australia. So here it is. And so effectively what that does is it kind of goes, well, he's someone who gets commissioned. Therefore, it positions him as someone who actually gets paid work. Therefore, his work is something that people are paying for high money for. Therefore, you can get a print of it. So when you're selling bedding or you're selling art or something like that, you've got to work out how you're going to get the person to believe the qualities that they want actually are inherent in the product. So for bedding, it's quality and feel and sleep and washability. So effectively, where do they believe they're really good? A lot of people believe that hotel bedding, like really top hotel bedding, is good. So you kind of line yourself with that and you build a story around with it. But we had to bring that, didn't we? We had to kind of create it.
Well, I think you're, you can't just plonk your products in your Shopify store or your WooCommerce store or your whatever your store is. You can't just plonk your products on and think, okay, I've done that. I've built there's my e-commerce tick. It is not a technical transaction. It is an emotional transaction that you are solving a need for the customer. And you have to understand what that need is. Is it an emotional lifestyle elevation? Or is it a problem-solving, rational, shit, I'm so glad I found the solution? And that's the fundamental. And I would say that e-commerce is still really far behind in terms of the understanding of this. And the retail landscape is so much further ahead. Take Screwfix. All right, Screwfix is a hardware store based in the UK. It's a massive hardware store. And what's the equivalent in New Zealand? It's like Bunnings or something.
Bunnings. Yeah.
Bunnings. It's a very similar place, very similar shop. And in the US, there's obviously loads of equivalents, but in the UK, Screwfix is a dominant player, and they've got the market really, really, really great. And basically, the retail store is like a self-serve till. There's fast-moving consumables as you walk in, but it's very much like a click and collect. Like you're ordering it online, you're going and you're collecting it same day. The whole model is about in-stock, immediate collection. And you can actually get it delivered on a bike, if you're desperate. But it's all about, if we can get this product to you quicker than anybody else, and the price is right, you're gonna win the sale. So it's all about fast, incredible availability. If I'm ordering it now, it's coming tomorrow. It is very much about needs, immediate response, and that's incredibly different to lots and lots of businesses. Who take the extreme example. Take a luxury lingerie store. Yeah, well, a luxury lingerie. You couldn't think of two opposites. Luxury lingerie store versus a hardware store, and how obviously different the experience is going to be, because the emotional needs of the customers is totally different. So therefore, the way we approach that business from the ads is very different. From and not just the ads, but the way we advertise. We would not suggest advertising a hardware store for the general products in Meta. It will be a Google play. It will be a Google business.
It's what they want. They need it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, Meta's not going to know that you need a new bolt for your vintage Porsche because you're going to do it on that day. It just doesn't know, does it? That you suddenly have an axle snap. It's too difficult.
It's where the intent exactly. It's where the intent is. It's it's kind of, I need this now. I've got to get it in, and everything is then So that's the first thing. Is like going back to bedding. It's or the example. To be honest, you pick bedding, which is actually a hybrid. So not it's quite a difficult one because it's got heaven and it's got hell. It's got an emotional lifestyle play, but also a problem-solving rational play. So it's like sits firmly in the middle. But I think the better example is probably like a replacement ball joint, for your car. The first thing is, where is that customer online? Are they in Meta or Instagram and Facebook? No, they're in Google, because they're like damn, I've got this problem and I need it fixed now. And let's assume they're doing it themselves. They're doing the job, because there's a lot of DIY mechanics. They need it. They're immediately searching. And there's lots of examples. So that's the first thing. If I'm starting a brand, let me just finish this bit because you breathe in. Mm-hmm. But if I'm starting an e-commerce brand, I've got to think where my customers are. And so should I go and start my whole Instagram, TikTok, Facebook meta strategy? No. If that's not where the customer is, I'm going to go onto Google. So that's the first question.
Well, interestingly,
you breathed
if you think
in
about
deeply, like you were going to say something really profound.
I've got a different point now because it's kind of moved on. But if you're on businesses that do well on Meta would be the traditional businesses that are on the very high busy streets on the UK high street. So the UK high street, right? But the ones that do well on Google will be the ones that you actually drive to go to industrial area or like a retail park. So like B&Q, for example, you drive to it because you need something, you go and pick it up. So B&Q, very good for Google because it's destination, you need to go and buy it. Whereas people go to the high street and they walk up and down the high street to be amused, to be interested, to kind of be teased by things.
More of the emotional, spontaneous. It's the more
spontaneous mode. It's like, oh, I'll go and have a look in there, see if they've got anything for me. And so you'll tend to see like the high street is dominated by women's clothes shops, shoe shops, things like that are like they don't necessarily know they're going out to buy that item. Well, you might go out specifically to buy some clothes for something like that, but they're all there as a kind of like, oh, wonder if I'll need one of those.
In fact,
you don't know you need it until you see it.
It's a really good point. Would you have, you wouldn't have a hardware store in a shopping mall typically, or
no,
B&Q DIY
because
store.
The rent would be too high, wouldn't it? Be too high for them there. And also they don't need to be there. Yeah,
they don't need to be there. Yeah, but likewise, you wouldn't have a high-end fashion store or a luxury lingerie store in the middle of an industrial estate.
No,
would you? So, in fact, I'd never even thought about it like that. It's absolutely right. So that's the first question: is where are my businesses? Are they in the shopping malls or are they in the industrial estates? The commercial
retail
industrial
parks,
estates. Yeah. The retail parks, and we're basically saying that if you're
I think of Lush, your example of Lush. If you built a Lush in a retail park with a destination like down the back of somewhere, no one's gonna go and buy soap from there.
But it's nobody.
But if you've got if you've got like a floor tiles place that does floor tiles, you would go and have a look at them and you go and seek them out. So
it's very true.
It just gives you an idea.
Yeah, I want to take the example of we were working with a high-end brand of trainers. It's this really nice brand of trainers. It's a niche brand. It's like £200-300 trainer.
Sneakers.
The only sneakers. Yeah. The only way you can sell, on Google, what are you going to bid on? White sneaker, cool white sneaker for cool hipsters. No, you can't.
No, it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist. So you'd have to do it on Instagram. That will be the place to do it, and it's the same thing as you had a shopping mall. You had a really cool shopping mall, and you want your sneakers in that shopping mall. In fact, that's probably why the concessions at like Selfridges and Harvey Nicks do well, because they're bringing in people, aren't they? There's traffic that's already perusing that store, and that's the way to go. So in fact, it's a good analogy, isn't it? Think about that first question: is where if my store was a physical retail store, where would I open it?
Where would be the best location that I could have it?
Yeah.
And then I think the other question is, so obviously that's how it looks from the front and where it is. The other question is, what does it look like inside? And I think a good analogy that I was also talking to someone this morning about was, well, look at what 80% of the sales come from. So usually like 80% of the sales come from 20% of the products, and those 20% of the products should dominate the layout of the store. So the layout of the store. So obviously like bedding is bedding sets and duvets, So that was what dominates it. So, you don't put the towels front and center, you don't put the other things, the upsells and all that kind of stuff. So if you think about that, you think about what's 80% of the revenue of the store is driven by, I don't know, 20% of the products. Effectively, you design your store around that. You design your store around making it easy for people to buy those products very easily and to check out very easily with that buying model. And if you think about the physical stores, they're all like that, really. Like McDonald's,
we'll take Apple.
Everybody's buying, yeah.
To go into an Apple store, do they have the charging cables at the front of the store when you walk in? No, they don't. They're right at the back. They're right at the back on the sides, aren't they? The ones at the front are the biggest bestsellers. They're the iPhones. The iPhones are always at the front because that's the biggest bestseller. They're going to get the most revenue from that store.
That's the hero, isn't it? It's the hero products.
So that's what you would put in your homepage banner. Your homepage would be those hero products. Would you put? You wouldn't have your little charging cable for $10. In the front. That would be a dramatic reduction of revenue.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also like supermarkets. The reason they put veg first is because once you've selected your veg, because most people go and select the veg. They go to the oranges and they pick up the oranges they want, and they put down the ones they don't want. Once you've put the effort into selecting your veg, you're not going to leave the store because you've put effort into selecting it, and therefore you're going to go around the whole store. So that's why veg is there. So it's there, you put effort into it. Whereas if you came in and there was like the crisp aisle and you'd put up a couple of crisps and you might go, you know what, I'm not feeling it today. I'm just gonna go. It's kind of like everything's designed for, most people come to the supermarket and 80% of people are buying some fruit and veg. So therefore we're putting that first. And that's kind of like stable, getting that right. Same thing with a lot of stores like McDonald's. When you go into McDonald's and you're at the till, like what's behind the till is the burgers. The burgers are there, ready for them to pick up, aren't they? You see the burgers sliding down that little slide. I haven't been to McDonald's for years, but that's what it used to look like. It's not the chicken McNuggets that are ready. It's not the milkshakes that are ready. It's the burgers, because probably 80% of the sales, people buying some kind of burger, aren't they? And so everything is designed around that 80% of the products. Sorry, 80% of the revenue that comes from those 20% of the products. Those 20% products dominate the layout. So a shoe shop.
And I think. Well, look, can I expand on the point? The other thing, the misconception is, I think probably, let's say we've talked about, the emotion, the need, and that fundamentally changes the strategy of your ads, and in terms of where you're going to place. And the other thing is, obviously, what we said before about you lead with the biggest best sellers, your hero products, and but this other one is the time to buy. And that's another big change. That if it's a long buying window, or which typically is a higher average order value, normally, but not always. But let's say it's a long buying window, then that experience is different. Like we're often not going to go for the sale immediately because it takes a lot, a long consideration. So take something like mattresses. A mattress sale versus a very short sale, which might be that, the coffee guys we talked about last week. Something that's typically a very short. And that would mean that we might really go for email acquisition. For the mattress sale because it is such a long cycle that there's no way we're going to get the sale. If we try and immediately skip all those dominoes, the 6 dominoes of e-commerce, we try and take them right to the last one straight away. Forget it. They just will not buy on that first visit. No matter what we do, they're just not ready. And so that's a big change, that length of time they have to go through versus, and I would say one thing as well. Fundamentally, if you are selling other people's products, that's very different to selling your own products. If they can buy these products anywhere, that's a basic, fundamental, massive change to strategy. If you're selling another brand of mattresses, and you were just a reseller of Silent Night mattresses, for example, then all of that warm up that could have been going on for months could have already been done, and you're just there to get the last sale, and then that's price, availability, trust. But if you are your own brand of mattresses, then that is a very
I think there's
different
also
proposition.
a huge difference between selling other people's products online and selling other people's products on a physical store. So if you're selling other people's products in a physical store, it's so different because you've got the customer there in the store. Like they have physically come to your store. You probably haven't opened up next to someone that sells, say you're a women's dress shop and you're selling that kind of clothes. You're probably not selling exactly the same clothes as the person next door. It's not very easy for them to pop round and get that exact dress next door. And so therefore they aren't as price competitive. Whereas if you were selling that dress online and you're onto Google and you're looking for the Hammersley Brothers pencil dress in blue, like you're going to go and see it across 20 different sites. So you can't, like, I think that we've seen this quite a lot, but like some people who had very successful physical store businesses with lots of chains across the country, they went online and they just thought that they would just be able to instantly just work online, and it didn't work. It was just, it's a different
we see this across
model.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing is that when we do, because we do loads of split testing. We have done for years, and we were always going looking at split testing. And the same split test that won on one e-commerce store can reduce the conversion or average order value on another store. And that is really fascinating when that happens, to understand the psychology of why. And one of the examples that was a really interesting example was the quick buy. The quick buy on the collection page. And how in one store that worked, that improved conversion rate and average order value quite dramatically. And another store, it reduced conversion rate and average order value. And you're like, well, why would that happen? Why would a quick buy, with quick buy is where you hover over, you're on the collection category page, and you've got, you don't have to click through to the product. You can buy from that page. But if you unpack, the one that won was a business that was a B2B business that had like a 20 average items per cart, and they knew what they wanted, and they wanted to get in, get out quick, and they would often do like a multi-buy. So they were like, going to buy, I need one of these, really quick. And that was great. Whereas another business was a very expensive clothing business, fashion business, and they were only ever buying one thing. The extreme example would be a wedding dress. Imagine if you were selling wedding dresses online and you had a quick buy on the collection page. How ridiculous that would be, because you want people to go through to the product page to see this wonderful, amazing imagery, great experience, testimonials, great video, and and really bring the product alive. So, if anybody's selling wedding dresses and has got quick buy on their Shopify store or whatever site you're on, turn it off right now. We've split tested that loads of times, and that is a really good example. In fact, it's probably a very good example coming right back to the title, which one size doesn't fit all, and how if you copy blindly somebody's site,
you wouldn't sell wedding dresses like you sell at McDonald's. You go up to the counter and then there's little wedding dresses sliding down the metal ready for you to pick up. You're going, yeah, we'll have a double wedding dress, please, and that'll do. Thank you very much. Hold the cheese. It doesn't really make sense, and you have to understand the buying cycle, the belief you've got to instill in the customer, what your mechanism is for that, and that's branding and story, and then also the layout of the store, the flow of the store makes a big difference. And we've seen it. Like, what was the biggest, starkest thing is when we got the layout wrong with a new site and the conversion rate dived, and the only thing that changed was how people navigated through the category. That was the only thing that had changed, and it made such a difference to the conversion rate. And so you've got these little subtle things that you don't really know about until you mess them up, and then you go,
exactly. And also,
something went wrong.
It was often we would see a conversion dip from replatforming. Because they'd be moving from one bespoke platform to another, And it would be, they'd be like, oh my God, it's going to be great. It's going to really improve conversion rate. And because it's better, the site, it's better tech and it's, and the conversion rate would drop. And you're like, well, okay, what have you changed? And you're looking at the old one versus the new one.
Yeah, everything.
And they would have missed some massive anxiety reduced, like the warranty guarantee, or there'd be a positioning statement that they'd have lost. And they just became obsessed with the technology that, okay, we've moved to Shopify, it's going to be better. And often it isn't because they missed something fundamentally about the motion. I mean, I would say, we unpack this a lot more, when we talk about like the 6 dominoes of e-commerce. And that's really kind of getting into the psychology of it. But I think, I think it is really important for everybody. So should we summarize?
Yeah. The last thing I was going to say was when you were talking about the Rolex casters model, the mistake a lot of them make is they build a site for themselves, not for the customer. It's so easy to do. And you see people do it on telly. When people do those houses updo houses and they buy stuff, all those auction things where they always buy stuff that they want, and then they try and sell the house, or they try and do the auction, and then they go, oh, people don't like a shower in the living room as much as I wanted to have one in there. It's just you have to be very careful that you're not designing it for yourself, because you always will. And so if you haven't thought about that, then you're probably putting things in there that you want that the customer doesn't want, because you're going to be very different. A lot of us are very different.
Well,
The ultimate customer.
And then the first example was, the where you're copying a bigger brand. Is you got to think about why people would buy from you. How you're going to be disruptive. And being facing that grim reality that nobody cares about your brand as much as you do. And they're quite happy to buy from an existing brand they've been buying for many years. You've really got to really think about that. But probably practically, I would summarize and say, look, I think, going back to where, if you were a retail store, where would you open? Would you be in an industrial estate, commercial estate, or would you want to be in a really busy shopping mall? And that might give you an idea whether or not you're more of a Google business or a Meta business.
Yeah. Would you want to be in a seaside town? Would you want to be in a holiday town? Would you want to be in the main high street of a busy city? Like, if the answer to that question really helps you understand where your targeting is, what you're going to be bidding on, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. It's a good analogy.
Get that right first. And then how you lay your store out. What would you put in your shop window? What would you put in the shop window? What would you put when they first arrive? What would you put at the back of the store?
Yeah. It's all
and then
how
long would it take?
It's all about flow. Yeah.
It's
all good.
All right. Well, that's an interesting concept, eh? I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Take care.